Broadcasting the information the mainstream media won't touch. This is The Richie Allen Show in association with DavidIke.com.
I meant, when I said earlier on that the most profound interview that we had on this programme since it began in September of 2014, in terms of what it did to me personally and how much time I spent thinking about it afterwards, was when I first spoke with my first guest, which was back in January of last year. It was either in December of 2014, January of 2015. She's a remarkable woman. She is the producer of the outstanding film Traffic, which is the only, it has to be said tragically, expose of Britain's forced adoption industry, because that's what it is. Her own story itself was one of the things that left me scratching my head and thinking for days afterwards, and she might briefly remind you of what happened to her. Now, I think she's got guts beyond anything I've ever come across before, unbelievable courage. Traffic 2 is nearly ready for release. It's in the final stages of editing. Thrilled to bits, really am, to welcome back to the programme my friend Emma Ibbitson. Emma, welcome back.
Hi, Richie.
How are you?
Stressed.
Well, you've had a lot going on, don't you? Pete's status hasn't been well at the moment, and that's we're sorry to hear that. I know he's in hospital, and as well as that, you're up to your eyes with the film, so I can only imagine you are stressed. But thanks for taking the time out to talk to us.
To come on, Richie.
Well, thanks for it, Emma. Tell us about the so late last year you finished shooting Traffic 2. You said to me this morning you're in the final stages of editing. You must be incredibly excited about getting it out there.
We are. I mean, we want to get it out there as quickly as possible, but at the minute it's just going through the sound edit, and Pete's just doing the final little tweak bits to it before we send it off for its certificate. So it's all just, it's giddiness. We're all very giddy here at Pete Middleton Pictures because we want to get it out there as quickly as possible.
By the way, folks, Pete Middleton Pictures is on Facebook. You really should be following that. So get on to Facebook now and connect to Pete Middleton Pictures. The impact that Traffic itself had was massive, in spite of the fact that the British government did everything it could to make it difficult for people to see the film. Remind our listeners about that hassle, that constant battle with getting the film out there.
Well, they've actually have managed at the minute, Richie, to force it down off Amazon. It's actually not on sale.
It's not on sale? I didn't know that, you see. It's not currently on sale on Amazon. Why is that?
They've made a copyright claim to Amazon saying, well, originally they said it was a copyright claim against the cover. Then we got in touch with the council, who then said, no, it's still the issue that my daughter's featured. So technically, Richie, they've copyrighted my daughter.
Do you want to remind... I don't want to drag you through this again and again, Emma. It's been 6 months since we spoke. Do you want to briefly... And I can confirm all of this. Tragically, I can confirm every word of it. Do you want to briefly explain to our listeners why you were separated from your daughter?
Well, I think the biggest issue they had was the drink driving video. They said it was like, the word of the social worker, Richie, was it was emotional and psychological abuse to allow her to do what her heart wanted her to do.
Your daughter had a part in a film. You have to understand, folks, Pete Middleton Films, as well as making documentaries like Traffic, is also a company that you can hire to make films like training videos and all sorts of films, and they do a terrific job. And I mean that. I've seen some of the films they've produced. And you were doing a road safety video, an anti-drink driving campaign, and your daughter took part in it. Yeah,
and it got a lot of appraisal from the local police force, from the local drink driving video charities such as like CAD, SCAD. It got a lot of praise for that, but for some reason social services seem to have a big issue with that.
I'm just going to say to our listeners, go on to youtube.com. There's an extended interview with Emma going way back to where Emma explains exactly what happened to her and to Pete and her daughter, and it's just horrendous. Without getting into it, the details of it again, Emma, what's the status of all of that at the moment? Where is that now at the moment in terms of you getting to see her?
I don't, Richie. If you remember from our last interview, Richie,
yeah.
I mentioned that if I didn't take traffic down, I'd never see her again.
Yeah.
I haven't seen her since that last interview.
And you had supervised visits, didn't you, up until that point?
Yeah, I did, yeah. Now I don't see her at all. They say she doesn't want to see me.
And the upshot of all this, folks, is this was the motivation for Emma and for Pete Middleton to begin making traffic. I mean, you know, I was going to, you know, promote the bejesus out of traffic now and send people to Amazon, and I didn't realise it'd been taken down, Emma. That's incredible. Is there anywhere anybody can watch that film at the moment, or are they dependent on buying copies or borrowing copies from people who have it already?
Well, I like to say to people, if you've got a copy, lend it to a friend, let that friend lend it to a friend, lend it to another friend. It's all about getting it out there. I mean, if people go to the Pete Middleton Pictures page on Facebook, they can see the little snippet that we've done with David that we've taken from Traffic 2, and they can see that, and they can get a gist of what the first one was about from watching that little extract of David.
Now, Traffic was full of the most harrowing stories. The success of Traffic was that it highlighted and gave a voice to men and women who'd had their children stolen from them by social services and either sent into foster care or sent into forced adoption where they couldn't ever see them again. I said at the time, you know, David had been saying stuff off and on to me over the years, but I didn't pay too much attention to it. It was only interviewing you and watching the film and then checking back on some of the cases that you talked about to see were you telling the truth, basically, or was this just, you know, a very angry film made by an angry woman who, you know, wanted to get back at the state? But of course, it wasn't. Yes, it is an angry film, but it isn't. It isn't a film made by somebody who is looking for revenge. It's a film that is telling a story that just has to be told. And the question, I suppose, is the film is all about these men and women. One or two of them have come on this show since, what they've gone through, detailing their cases, what the state has done to them. It's absolutely disgusting. The only real coverage it's ever gotten in the mainstream media is through Christopher Booker and laterally people like Ian Josephs and yourselves, but outside of that, nobody. So where does Traffic 2 pick it up then, Emma? What's Traffic 2 looking at? Where's it going?
Well, obviously I can't say too much.
Yeah.
But what Pete's done is, to give you a rough idea, we've put chapter points in there. So we're going from the training of a social worker, overlooking genuine abuse, which we know happens. Richie, children die in foster care and no one seems to bat an eyelid. Target and manipulate, that's when they tend to look for the certain person. With a certain gender of family they tend to attack now, especially with legal aid being revoked. Then you've got remove. Removal is obviously taking the child. You've got contact, which is when they suppress your contact with your child. Fabrication of evidence, we all know they do that. That is second nature. Marketing, that covers the foster care, how they advertise for these children. Abuse in care, again, I know personally my son suffered, one of my kids suffered abuse in care. Payout and promotion. We found out that social workers are paid bonuses for adopting children. Not very big bonuses, but they are paid bonuses, and we wrap things up with moving on to the next family. Listen
to what Emma just said there. So social workers, when they, and it's important, I suppose, as well, to talk about the power that they have when it comes to these secret hearings, in terms of how what the social worker says or has written down is taken by, as a sitting judge, as absolute fact. The judge, Richie, sorry to interrupt, but the judge only has to believe 51% of what he hears, not 100%, 51%. So if your social worker takes a dislike to you and she says something about you, in the court of law, the judge will believe it over you trying to defend what she said about you. And then, as you said, they get bonuses for the children that are sent into permanent adoption.
Yeah, I mean, we have mentioned that in Traffic.
In Traffic,
again, in Traffic 2, one mum actually phoned to be a social worker and they told her that we do pay bonuses. I think it's £30 per foster care, £150 per adoption placement. I mean, it's not supposed to be about money, Rich. It's supposed to be about protecting the children.
It's worth a massive amount of money, and we'll get into that in a minute. Ian Josephs, who Emma knows, and we've had on the programme, is he's a legal scholar, Ivy League educated man who's never acted, so he's never practiced as a solicitor or as a barrister. An unbelievably intelligent man, and he's been working with women who are in the situation Emma found herself in. In some cases, he's advised and helped women get out of their country and go somewhere else to avoid losing their child. As of 2013, more than 25,000 children a year are taken away from their parents by what we call the UK secret family courts. Mm-hmm. It's unbelievable. We have talked at length on this programme. Emma has talked about it. Newborn babies are taken away in Britain today for the risk of emotional abuse. The child might be emotionally abused because the mother has had health problems in the past. The child is then given for adoption to strangers. What's amazing about this, Emma, is when we say things like this, it's often said about you and about reporters like me is that we take the exception and we try and make it out to be the rule. But we're not talking about the exception. Thousands upon thousands of children are taken away because of the risk of emotional abuse, not because anything has happened. Do you want to expand on that?
Well, see, our theory is, and we've asked this question for many, many weeks and many, many months, what is the category of emotional abuse? How can you foresee a risk to a child? I mean, we know from, I think there's been 37,000 newborn babies taken over a period of 3 years. 37,000 babies, Richie, on a risk of emotional abuse.
37,000, that's 12,000 babies each year for the last 3 years because of the risk of emotional abuse.
And obviously, general media, which I despise, will say it's because these parents are repeated drug users, they're repeated alcoholics, they can't manage these children. That is, I do not believe.
They've had a previous history of depression. We covered a famous case last year of the young woman M. I won't mention her name. Her grandfather was on this programme. She had severe mental health problems, but she wasn't violent or aggressive. Her problems were to do with pressure inside the skull and the cranium, and she had terrible headaches, and it plunged her into put her in a pretty bad place, and she was in and out of hospital. She had the baby. They were around. The baby was staying with the grandparents, lovely people. They took the child into foster care, said that the grandparents were too old to look after the child, even though the grandparents weren't, because they were 67 and 58, hardly too old to do it. So 37,000 babies in 3 years. That's just over 12,000 a year for what we call pre-crime, Emma. No crime has been committed, but a crime might happen, so we're going to take your child away.
Yeah, if we can't predict how you will behave with that infant from now, for the next 15 years, or the next 16 years, or the next 18 years, we can't predict that. But we'd like to safeguard that child just in case you may hurt that child. So we're going to take them away. We're going to give them to a family we think will protect the child. And I'm not saying all the time, Richie, but most times we end up with dead infants coming out of foster care because they're given to a foster carers that cannot manage these children. They don't know how to. They've maybe never fostered before. They've never adopted before. You do get a lot of foster carers adopting, then changing their minds and just chucking the kids back into the system.
Do we have any idea of the sorts of numbers of people who do that? How often does that happen?
I sent a Freedom of Information request to all the local authorities in the UK. I think they fudge the figures, but I think probably about 20% of the time, which doesn't sound hard, but when you're 5, Richie, and you're sent to an adoption party where you're given a balloon and a parent looks at a file and says, yeah, I'd like that little boy, and then she takes that little boy home, and then a month later she'd have changed my mind, and then she sends him back again. Oh, you've got the little girl that is at the adoption party that doesn't get chosen, and she can't understand why. Because her hair colour may be wrong, or she might have a different eye colour. These people are picking off children to meet what they want. And you've got 4 and 5-year-olds going home devastated and cannot understand why the system doesn't want them.
Foster carers can be paid and are paid upwards of £400 a week for each child they take in. And according to Ian Josephs, and when I had Ian on, I spent 2 days back checking all this information so that I could challenge him if he was telling porky pies, but of course he wasn't. You have to do that, of course. The companies which employ these foster carers make unbelievable amounts of money. And Christopher Booker wrote in The Telegraph back in 2012, you'll be aware of this article, that in 2012, Rothschilds, there's the name for you now, organised the sale of the National Fostering Agency, the second largest company of its type in Britain at the time. The private equity and pension funds bid, they bid up the initial bid price of 80 million to 135 million pounds. 65,000 children were in care in 2012. It's a lot more now. The annual bill then was £37,000 per child, which is over 2.4 billion. And that is saying nothing about the other costs of the childcare system, like the massive fees paid to experts to testify at trial. You know, experts can charge 25, 30, 40 grand just to turn up and give their opinion in court. And of course, the barristers themselves. And Christopher went on to talk about Barnardo's, which back in 2012 had a turnover of over £250 million. It's a massive, massive industry. It
is. I was recently looking at figures, and I'm trying at the minute with the home office won't talk to me for certain reasons, but I found an annual expenditure of what they call social protection. I think that come in at 44 billion in a year.
Say that again, Emma, will you?
44 billion in the between 2014 and 2015. I've managed to allocate what they call social protection of a bill of £44 billion spent by our UK government.
We've had a tweet from Richard Angelis, and he's asking Emma what measures she would recommend for he says, the 10,000s of parents in the UK who treat their children badly, irresponsibly and cruelly. But we're not talking about that, Richard. And Emma did say earlier on, there are children in very difficult situations at the moment. Ironically, it's well known that my situation as a child was terrible. And if anybody needed to be taken out of his environment, it was me. But we're not talking about that. And what we're saying is, and the evidence seems to be bearing out, is that the vast majority of children taken away are not being taken away because they're in immediate or imminent danger, or because the parents are slapping them around or beating them or whatever. It does go on, Richard, and you've said this time and time again, we're not talking about that. You're not saying that these children shouldn't be taken away from their homes.
No, I know, Richard. The amount of parents that we interviewed for both films, we have come across parents where I've said, yes, the social worker did do a good job. That child is now protected. Thank you. And I will praise the social worker on that. But when I go to another parent who gives me black and white proof that their social worker did indeed remove their infant at 6 hours old from their house with an illegal court document, and then the police turn around and say, what happened to you was a criminal act, I obviously say, yes, this was an illegal removal.
I've had a question which is very good. I should have asked you this myself. Is there any way you can put traffic on YouTube, but people can only watch it if they pay, the price for it?
Yeah, we're looking into that at the minute, because obviously with our injunction, I can't say, yes, I am, because then they're going to have me in court for breaking the injunction.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of the, sometimes I go and, sometimes I'm sitting around, I'm not often idle now, but sometimes I say, there'll be an old film on YouTube. I think, great, an old film, somebody's put it on there. But I don't realise it's not out of copyright. And in the small print is, give us $3.49 and you can watch the film or whatever. And I should have thought of that. But well done to our tweeters who've said that. So you are looking into that. Alex was on to say, brilliant stuff. Alex was on to say child abuse is ignored so that social services can claim more needs to be done and take even more good kids away. It's absolutely sick. And I was sent a tweet by Alan of a story that's on fox9.com this afternoon. And it's a story of a 5-year-old boy who was taken out of his class by Child Protection Services in St. Paul. I don't know where St. Paul is now. It could be in DC, maybe around Washington. Maybe I'm wrong. He was taken out in the wrong. A combination of similar names with mistakes made by adults caused it to happen, causing a young boy and his mother, with an experience that they'll never forget, dragged out of school and whisked off into a van, and it was the wrong child.
Don't surprise me.
Bizarre, that sort of incompetence, really. When you can't imagine the state doing anything more serious than separating a child from its mother. So how could they balls it up as bad as that?
Well, I mean, when we spoke earlier on, Richie, I mentioned about. I mean, personally, I can say it. And I've met mothers the same. I mean, a while back, I had a pregnancy scare. I thought I was possibly pregnant. Mother Nature decided to intervene, and we thought, because we're not trying, Richie. Gosh, we're not trying. But the fear I had of that, the absolute terrified to the point of I could genuinely end my life at the thought they would come and take my baby away. No mother should have to feel like that.
I mentioned at the top of the show, I was going to ask you to repeat something you said to me this morning, which I found it terribly depressing. I really did. Again, it stayed with me all day long. What you said that there was a time recently when you and Pete thought that you might be. Go on, tell the story. Go on. You tell it. Go on.
Sorry, Rich, can you say that again? It broke up a bit at my
Sorry
end.
about that. Yeah, you were telling me this morning that recently Pete and you thought that you might be pregnant. Tell us what happened then. What you thought?
Yeah, I mean, it's like we won't, like I say, Rich, we're not trying for children, but Mother Nature tends to try and intervene, and I've missed a period, and I've begun to panic, and I'm getting more panicked, and I'm thinking, oh my God, social services are going to come in, they're going to take this baby away. I can't bear the thought of carrying a baby for 9 months, knowing that when it's born, I'm going to lose that baby. And the stress that puts on you and the fear is unbelievable, Richie. You are petrified to the point of you don't know what to do anymore.
Should be a joyous thing, shouldn't it?
It's a natural thing.
Should be a joyous
thing. You should be allowed
thing,
to have a baby. I mean, I did a pregnancy test and it came back negative, and to be honest, Richie, I was overjoyed. Because I thought, this is not one you're getting your hands on.
Emma Ibbitson is on the line to us from Yorkshire. This is a woman whose child was taken away from her because the child was in a film that they were paid to make, the production company, about road safety and drink driving. This is true, by the way. None of this. I've been doing this too long to be caught out and fooled by somebody coming on the programme and telling me lies. We looked into Emma and Pete back to front before she came on the programme. Everything she said is true. She's the producer of Traffic, which is one of the most important films I've ever seen. We tried to show it in Manchester last year. A lovely guy called Anthony Bradley, who listens to the programme, wanted to show it in a community cinema, but there were issues then because of politics. And before Anthony even got around to, basically, I think he had gotten the tickets printed and people were buying them. The authorities were on top, the local authorities were on top saying, no, you can't put that film on, because it's talking about children and it's talking about people and you can't do that. But I have a big ambition to show Traffic 1 and Traffic 2 together back to back. I'm going to try and find a venue in Manchester if it kills me this year, because it's just outstanding. It's outstanding journalism, and it's the greatest secret in this country, Emma. Are you constantly amazed at how few people know this is going on?
When you try and tell people, Richard, they instantly, stigma's attached, and they instantly say, you abused your child. So that's it. They're not interested. People, sheeple as I call them, are not interested. The state tells them we only remove children from abused families. So when you get someone like me that's trying to expose it, I'm classed basically as one of them parents, a bitter parent.
Are you telling me that, I want you to repeat this, is that if you were out some morning doing a bit of filming and some young woman, same age as you, comes along out of curiosity, what are you doing there? We're making, you might be making a training film or something, nothing to do with traffic, and you get talking and you say, yeah, I'm Emma, yeah, how are you, nice to meet you and all that. The minute you say, well, one of the films I've made is about traffic, my child was taken away by social services, the barriers go up straight away. That woman instantly believes, no matter what, you must be dodgy.
I think people think straight away, they do at that point, think, well, why did they take it? And then when you say, because of this drink driving video, they say, no, it's not, it's something else. They don't do that. social workers don't do that. There's something else in me you're not telling me. No, I've told you. And they'll say, well, no, I don't believe you. Social workers don't do that. That's what you get. You can't convince people that it's happening.
A couple of people have been on to say good things about Bernardo's, that they had personal experiences, or friends did. We've also had a couple of questions about Baby P, Baby Peter, which is a terrible case where social services, you can't say anything else except that it was gross incompetence. The child was being badly abused. They didn't notice. One or two people saying are social services overcompensating because of the failings of the Baby Peter case, which is a good question. But of course, this horrendous thing of adopting thousands of babies for no reason other than the risk of emotional abuse, which is a nonsense, was going on long before the death of Baby P. But it is a good question, and it's understandable. It's horrendous. You know, I've been speaking to you privately, and this affects anybody who's thinking about having children in this country. If you're thinking about having children, how horrendous is this? This is something you need to consider. I've had a question in, and this is from Claire Doyle. Now, Claire says she's Irish and says she's listening to the programme not far from Kingston upon Thames, where I used to live many years ago for a short time. And Claire says, Richie, will you ask Emma about this thing about leaving social services into your home when you take your baby home? How true is this, or is it an urban legend? I think what she's referring to in the question is, when you bring your child home from the hospital, at some stage we're led to believe that somebody from social services will turn up and ask to come and see how the child is in the welfare. What's the advice, Emma? Is the advice to tell him to go and feck off? We don't need your help. Our baby is fine, thank you. Or what do you do?
We don't actually have to let a social worker in. He or she have no right of entry. They have no power of entry. You do not have to open your door and let them in. You can say to them, "I'm fine." Always be polite. That's a big thing.
Don't say feck off for a start. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
No, because then they'll say you're uncooperative.
Yeah. And I wouldn't do that anyway. I mean, if they came to my door, I'd say, "Listen, everything is hunky dory. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Bye for now."
And basically just say, if you give me your manager's phone number, I'll phone your manager and ask your manager what the issue is. But as for letting you into my property, I won't be doing that.
Will they come back, though?
They'll persistently they will keep coming back. But the best advice is just tell them nothing anyway. That's the big thing. You tell them nothing. If they've got nothing, they've got nothing on you. And from the very first intervention of a social worker, you must record every single word she ever says.
Is it not a bad idea then to use the smartphone you have to turn on the little mic recorder on it or whatever? Can you do that? You can. Yeah,
you can buy a dictaphone, Richie, for less than £30. You can use your smartphone. Just every single word this person ever says to you has to be recorded, because that is detrimental to your case, because you can prove if she's lied in order to remove your child.
And these people, according to Emma Ibbitson, who's on the line to us now from Yorkshire, and we know this to be true because we've investigated this, these people are looking for reasons to remove the child from the home because their livelihood depends on it. This is the reality in Britain in 2016. There are people out there farming, moving around like predators, working for the state or for the local council, looking for reasons to remove children from homes in order to line their own pockets and the pockets of the agencies. It's hard to believe it's true, isn't it?
I mean, we are over the moon when we managed to grab David. I mean, that was fantastic. And I'm not just saying that because he's probably listening, David.
Yeah. And if he is, how are you, David, by the way? Yeah.
But we were over the moon when, I mean, Traffic 2 on its own, Rich, is worth watching for what David says. I mean, when we took Cookie over there, our interviewer from the film, he was elated that he got to meet his idol. I mean, once he got out of earshot of David, he did a little jump around like a 5-year-old. I bet David. But there's so many people saying the same things that someone at some point's got to pay attention, and some things have got to change. I mean, at the minute, Richie, privatisation's looming. David Cameron's pushing to put the adoption industry and the foster care industry into privatisation.
He is, of course, yeah.
And we know G4S are moving in on it. We know American venture capitalists are moving in on.
And this is G4S that beats the piss out of young offenders that are in their care, and humiliates them and mocks them. Yeah, Theresa May's husband. Yeah. Theresa May's husband, big shareholder in G4S. It's so dirty and filthy and stink. It's incredible, isn't it?
And it's our children, Richie. It's our children, flesh. Yeah. It's our blood, and this is what's happening to them. And don't think because you may have a job, your husband may have a job, you're a bit well off, you live in a better house, you're still a target. Everyone is potentially a target in this country. It doesn't matter what you do for a living. I think
you're absolutely right, but I'm going to say this. I'm going to slightly disagree with you, even though you are far better briefed now than I am on this. But, I think they'll always lean towards the working poor, Emma, because we don't, and I say we, and I include myself in this, we just can't go to a solicitor straight away and hand over a few £100 because we don't have it.
Yeah.
It's the killer, isn't it? The minute they start that shit, if you've got a few bob, you've got a chance because you can go to a well-recommended solicitor and say, listen, here you are, here's your retainer, deal with this for me, I'm not having it. But the vast majority of us couldn't even imagine it. I mean, I wouldn't have it to just give a solicitor, you'd have to be leaving yourself go hungry. So it's the working poor. Yeah, everybody's at risk, you're right, but working class people, housing estate people like me, where I was brought up in a housing estate, it's our families to come after because we can't fight them.
I think I will take back what I said, but it still goes there, Richie, saying that it doesn't matter, but the working class, I mean, you can basically class me and Pete as the working class as well, and we've met families that you've got parents that are tutors and they've lost their daughter because she was off school for 2 days.
Let me ask you this. Have you got a stockpile of traffic?
Can I say that live?
You don't have to say anything, but I mean, I don't want to know how many copies you have, but do you have copies lying around? Is it possible for somebody else to sell them on your behalf, or will we be subject to the same injunction?
If the injunction basically says that me, Pete, or affiliates or third parties.
So nobody can sell it?
They've completely and utterly done us over, Richie.
Jesus Christ. Yeah. Peter was on to say, tell it like it is, Emma. A bunch of desensitised, hypnotised, manipulated human beings. Polly was on to say, been at it 4 years. My dad's father died in 36. Nan had 5 boys. They came and said, hand them over and forget them. But it didn't happen, says Polly. Well done, Polly. Tez was on to say, this is lovely. Tez, Manchester lad, good friend of ours. Traffic will be the British version of Making a Murderer. People need to see the film. I'll buy some copies if I can and pass on to friends. Says Terence. It is the most important film that any parent or would-be parent could ever see in your life. It really is. I can't say enough about it. It's horrible. I tell you, when you see it, it's rotten. You wish you didn't see it when you watched it. It's medicine, isn't it? It's like milk of magnesia, or it's like cod liver oil. You have to have it, but it's awful.
The plus is, Richie, though, every day, I mean, not so much every day for now, but I get messages from parents saying, because of you and Pete, and I watched Traffic, I retained my children. Because of Traffic, I used that as an educational tool to keep social workers away from my door.
One of the things we didn't mention, and you've just brought it up now, in a way you've brought it up, one of the things we didn't mention. Now, who knows what sort of a world we'll have in 2027 or 2028 when your daughter will be 18. Who knows what sort of a world we'll have? Who knows how totalitarian it will be unless we stop it? But look at the way the state is leaving itself open to litigation in the future. Because, there are going to be thousands of children whom are going to find out that they were wrongfully taken away from their parents, whom are going to sue the authorities. You're looking at, of course, the barristers will be rubbing their hands with glee. I mean, this is the Magdalene sisters. This is isn't it? It's exactly the same thing. This is state-sponsored kidnapping of children for no reason. Well, there's some very, very dark reasons that David probably gets into in Traffic too, which I'm in line with. But, for people just getting into this, money's just so obviously a huge factor in all of this. Emma, we're going to leave it there for now. I'm going to shut up. I'm going to give you the last word. People hearing about this for the first time, and I think there probably will be people hearing about this for the first time. What do you want to leave them with? What do you want to stay in their minds?
Oh, gosh, what a question, Richie.
You have time to think about it now, you know. I'm not rushing you. We're not in school, like. I'm not going to throw chalk at you. What would you want people to go away after hearing this and do?
Well, obviously, go look on Pete Milton Pictures fan page on Facebook. We've also got a traffic page that will give you a lot of information and help you understand really what's happening with the system, what's happening to these children. And also there's links to trailers for the first film there. There's the second snippet from the films on there. Just people look, just pay attention. Look at what's really going on. Don't listen to what the media tells you. Just have a look yourself. Make that informed decision yourself, because we need you to help us change it.
You're one of the greatest people I ever met. You know that. We didn't meet face to face. We've only met on the radio. You're just an incredible woman. You really are.
Thank you.
Nobody should ever have had to go through what you've gone through, but you're so selfless because you realise that it's happening to tens of thousands every year of more women and men, and that's the focus of your work and Pete's work. Pete Middleton Pictures, that's all you got to do on Facebook. I'll tweet out a link to it. Do connect to it, do like it, and stay with it. This is one of the most important issues in the independent media that we're covering. There's nothing more important than this right now, I'm telling you. Emma, great to chat with you. Give Pete our best, and I hope his father gets well and gets out of hospital soon.
Thank you, Richie.
You're brilliant. Look after yourself.
Yeah, you too.
Bye for now. The great Emma Ibbitson is a producer of Traffic, best documentary film I've ever seen in my life. Traffic 2 is nearly finished and will be sent then for a certificate to the British Film Board, whatever that's called. God help them. Because there'll be resistance to it, as there was and as there is resistance to Traffic.